May 1945. Dawn breaks over a dusty assembly point near the shattered port of Wilhelmshaven, where the air still carries the sharp tang of cordite and the salt of the North Sea. A small group of young women in faded navy blue uniforms stands in loose formation, their faces pale beneath the brim of service caps. They are Nachrichtenhelferinnen of the Kriegsmarine, signals auxiliaries, secretaries, teleprinter operators, who for years have routed orders across the Atlantic, tracked convoys, and relayed the commands that sent U-boats into the deep. Now the war has ended for them. American jeeps roll to a halt and soldiers of the United States Army step down, rifles slung, helmets pushed back. The women brace themselves, eyes fixed on the ground, awaiting the harshness they have been taught to expect from victors. This moment, unremarkable amid the vast surrender of the Third Reich, reveals a fracture in the ideology that had shaped these young lives. For 4 years, Nazi propaganda had painted the American soldier as a gangster, a product of racial chaos and plutocratic greed, brutal, vengeful, devoid of honor. Yet what these Kriegsmarine Helferinnen encountered in the weeks that followed was something their training had never prepared them for: ordinary human courtesy extended across the divide of war. The role of women in the German Naval Auxiliary Service had grown steadily since 1941. Initially volunteers drawn from the Bund Deutsche Mädel, they filled posts in coastal signal stations, headquarters, and fleet communication centers. By 1944, more than 20,000 served the Kriegsmarine alone, releasing men for sea duty. They wore the anchor insignia with pride, believed in the cause, and accepted the rigid discipline that governed their lives. Uniform regulations were strict, pay modest, living conditions Spartan. Many had never left Germany before the war. Few had ever spoken to a foreigner except through the static of a radio headset. When the Western Allies advanced into northern Germany in the spring of 1945, these units surrendered in small, scattered groups. U.S. Army field reports note the capture of several hundred female naval auxiliaries in Lower Saxony and Schleswig-Holstein. They were processed quickly, searched, registered, and moved to temporary holding areas because American policy treated uniformed auxiliaries as prisoners of war, entitled to Geneva Convention protections. Separate quarters were provided, rations equal to those of U.S.-based troops, and medical care when needed. No mass reprisals occurred. The war in Europe was over, and the soldiers who guarded them were often farm boys from Iowa or factory workers from Pennsylvania who had seen enough horror to last a lifetime. In those first days of captivity, the contrast struck deepest. The Helferinnen had expected contempt, perhaps worse. Instead, they received polite questions, offers of cigarettes, and extra portions from the mess tent. One recurring gesture stood out in later recollections. American guards, young men themselves, would pause during roll call or work details and quietly remark on a woman's eyes, "You have beautiful blue eyes," or "Those gray eyes remind me of home." Simple words, spoken without menace, yet they carried an emotional weight no propaganda film had anticipated. Faces accustomed to stern obedience flushed crimson. Some women turned away in confusion, others managed a shy nod. The compliment was not flirtation in the crude sense, but an acknowledgement of shared humanity at a moment when ideology insisted there could be none. Historical records confirm the pattern. Post-war questionnaires filled out by former auxiliaries, now preserved in German archives, repeatedly mention the surprise of courteous treatment. One anonymous signals operator wrote, "We had been told the Americans would treat us as criminals. Instead, they spoke to us as people." Another noted the abundance that surrounded the guards, the endless supply of chocolate bars handed out without expectation, the cans of fruit, the fresh white bread. That recurring symbol, the Hershey bar or the Wrigley's gum pressed into a hesitant hand, became for many the quiet emblem of a different world, one where material plenty seemed effortless, or a soldier could afford generosity because scarcity was not his daily reality. The experience worked a slow transformation. Ideological certainty began to crack. Women who had typed orders for the Battle of the Atlantic now listened to American radios broadcasting news of concentration camps, of cities reduced to rubble by their own air forces. They saw black soldiers among the guards, men propaganda had demonized as subhuman, sharing cigarettes and joking in perfect English. The rigid worldview cultivated since childhood could not withstand these quiet, cumulative shocks. Some auxiliaries requested books from camp libraries, others attended voluntary re-education lectures. By the time most were released in the summer of 1945, often only after weeks or months in custody, many carried with them a profound doubt about everything they had once believed without question. In the end, a simple compliment on a pair of eyes became more powerful than any battlefield victory. It pierced the armor of indoctrination not through force, but through the gentle assertion that the enemy was after all human and capable of kindness. Those brief moments in dusty holding pens and barbed wire enclosures spoke to a larger truth. Freedom is not only the absence of chains, but the presence of choices freely given, a cigarette offered, a kind word spoken, a bar of chocolate shared without demand. In such small acts, extended across the ruins of a continent, lay the quiet promise that something new could still grow from the ashes of the old.